Hey guys, this is Alfred back with another video. So with the 5.3 meta more or less settled down, I just want to talk about my thoughts on what characters are really good in the current meta. I made this very generic tier list. It's mostly based off how I think these characters fare in the current meta. 3 things to note on how I basically judge each character. The first thing I'm judging them based on is their strength and their individual power they bring to a team. So obviously characters that can contribute a lot and will have a very big impact in a team will be higher in the tier list, whereas characters that do not offer that much or they're not even that good in the role, they will be placed lower in the tier. The second consideration I have is flexibility. How many teams can you play this character? How many teams require this character? And how many teams does this character benefit? So obviously the more teams they benefit, including their overall and individual strength, their tier will be much higher in the list and vice versa. The third thing to consider is the Spiral Abyss. However, I feel like the Spiral Abyss is always changing, and now they're bringing back leyline disorders. This tier list may not be that accurate based on the current Abyss you are playing, based on when you're watching this video as well. Although the Spiral Abyss does have some consideration, it won't really affect the tier as much. So I won't be going through every single character, but I'll be skimming through the tier list and talking about the more important points. And with that said, let's begin with this video. Now first, let's talk about the S+ tier. I think none of these characters are very surprising. These characters are super strong. The best character right now in the game is Farina. I feel like Farina can be played in literally every single team you have. Obviously, if you have more specific teams like Overload, you cannot play Farina. But other than that, she is just such a strong sub DPS and support, and she can be a very vital character for every single account. Beside her, we have Nahida, obviously also very strong, and also the supports like Kazuha and Silunen, especially Silunen, the new inclusion. Basically, the Kazuha of Natlan, she is also super strong, and she can rival Kazuha's power. Although, if you're playing a non-Natalan team, Kazuha is going to be much stronger because he's Kazuha, and he also uses Veritas and Vannerer, which is super strong. And you've let an Arlecchino steal 2 fantastic characters, super strong, 1 Pyro, 1 Hydro, and they are the dominant DPS in the game right now. If you have them in your account, Spiral Abyss is so easy. Now let's talk about Malvika and Citlali. Malvika and Citlali reintroduces Melt into the meta, and Melt being one of the strongest teams once again in the meta. Overall, Malvika's damage is absurd and she's very strong. She can be played as a main DPS or a sub DPS in Natlan teams where she is very strong. And the strongest sub DPS in the game by far is still Yelan. Yelan is super flexible. She can self-sustain herself and she can battery herself as well, which makes her such a fantastic sub DPS. Most of the time you pair her with Xingqiu and you have a double Hydro sub DPS, constantly outputting Hydro for your team and applying Hydro a lot as well. This is the top of the tier list, the top of the top. These are the characters that you should look for in future reruns. Now let's talk about the S tier characters. These are characters that are really good as well in the meta, but they just don't meet the cut for S+ tier because S+ tier are the very strong characters. But nonetheless, characters in S tier are also very strong. Also, I want to point this out before I continue. I forgot to mention that this tier list, the characters are C0 and S1. So we're assuming that these characters have their best in slot weapon as well. First, I want to talk about Raiden Shogun. Raiden Shogun used to dominate the meta and be the best character in the game, although she has fallen off a little bit, but she is still very strong. Don't get me wrong, if you have Constellation 2 Raiden Shogun, she will be much higher in the tier list and in fact will definitely be in S+ tier. However, because she's not Constellation 2 and this tier list is based on Constellation 0, Raiden Shogun will be placed in S tier. But once again, like I said, she is still a fantastic character. Alongside her, I want to also talk about Zhongli. Zhongli for newer accounts is definitely going to be S+ tier because the amount of survivability he gives and the utility he gives as well is very strong for Zhongli and is very strong for newer players. But as you progress through the game and you get more characters and your account gets to be stronger, Zhongli will see a decrease in power level, although he is still super good. The 3 Natlan main DPS, Mualani, Chaska, and Kinich, all 3 of them are fantastic and all 3 are very strong. They do require Natlan support, so you probably will be playing them with Silunen in order for them to be very strong. Other than that, they're still fantastic characters and they can definitely be an S+ if you're playing a Natlan team. Now the character I want to talk about next is Hu Tao. I think she has the same problem as Raiden Shogun. At C0, she is not that strong. When you unlock C1, she can definitely be at the top of S tier and maybe even S+ tier if you're very mechanically good at Hu Tao. Next, let's move on to the A tier. A tier, we have the Cryo family. Right now, Cryo Cryo is still strong in the meta, but they really get outshined by stronger teams like Bond of Life, Night Soul Blessing, and Hyper Bloom, which are the 3 main ways of dealing damage right now. Freeze is still a decent way and is a very good alternative in case you do not have access to the other characters, but most of the bosses right now cannot be frozen, which is the main reason why Cryo has seen a decrease. We'll have to see the release of the Cryo Archon. Maybe she will make Cryo very strong and very great again, but right now Cryo is not as strong as they used to be, although it's still a really good substitute for the other main DPS teams. Next we have Ayato and Tartaglia. This one, a lot of people have been arguing that they can definitely be in S tier, where I do agree they can be in S tier, but like I said, they have the same problem as Ayaka and Ganyu and the other Cryo characters, is that they just really get outshined by the other teams and they aren't as powerful as the stronger teams we have right now in the meta. Next I want to talk about is Emily. Emily is a fantastic burning character. If you say that she belongs in S tier, I do agree. She has some chance to be in S tier. The main reason why she's in A tier is probably the same reason as Tartaglia and Ayato and Ayaka and Ganyu, is that burning is not a very strong way of doing damage right now in the game. It is not as efficient, but it still does a lot of damage. Now for B tier, not much to talk about here. These characters are not surprising. In B tier, I did place Keqing and not Sino, and the main reason why is Keqing is just much more flexible than Sino, because Keqing can be played in quick swap teams, whereas Sino has to be the main DPS. It sounds a little bit biased because I do love Keqing and I'm a Keqing main, but trust me, Keqing with the rise of Hyper Bloom is very strong. I did not place her in A tier because I feel like the other Hyper Bloom characters are still much stronger than Keqing because she is a free character. I also included Sijuin in this tier. If you're a newer player, same thing as Zhongli, she can probably be A tier and even S tier for newer players. For veteran and endgame players, Sijuin is not as powerful and not as strong as Kokomi, who can provide a lot of Hydra application and a lot of healing as well. For C tier, we have Klee, Diluc, Sino, and Eula, just 4 characters that do not have much love in the current meta. Some people might say Diluc has a very strong plunging attack build. With the introduction of Silali, yes, he is still very strong, but the problem is the flexibility portion, where to build a very strong Diluc team, you're very restricted to these characters in order for you to do damage. And even with Silali, Xianyun, and Bennett in a Diluc team, he is still not gonna do a lot of damage, sadly, as the other DPS. This is why he is at C tier alongside with Klee and Sino. Eula is just very unlucky. Physical is really not in the meta right now, and once again we gotta wait for the Cryo Archon to see the state of Cryo and the state of physical, but for now C tier is where Eula will be. And finally D tier, the worst of all the characters, we have Aloy and Qiqi. I think this comes to no surprise, these characters are pretty bad. Qiqi has a team with Clorend, where you play the Clorend Qiqi team and you basically give Clorend a lot of bond of life and a lot of damage, but other than that, that's the only meta team she is played, and even that, it's not Clorend's best team. So there you have it, the 5.3 meta in a nutshell. Hopefully this tier list gives an insight of what characters you should pull in the future meta and the future banners. So if you like this kind of videos, please do leave a like. It shows me I should do more of these tier list videos. Comment down below what you would change in this tier list, whether you agree or disagree. Like I said for the last time, this is my opinion, so please feel free to disagree and change around the tier list as well. And lastly, do subscribe. We'll be doing more meta overviews like this in the future and more tier lists. I really do enjoy these videos. I also do it for Honkai Star Rail. And with that, I will see you guys next time. Peace.